Dawn, you are a former president of the Melville Millionaires, and you are currently sitting on the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey Board as a governor. What's that like?
Oh, geez. Well, it's been interesting to say the least. There haven't been many women involved at the governor level, so it is a challenge sometimes to get your point across and to be heard sometimes. I think in general, it's not known to have that many women involved. And so sometimes I think initially when some first met me, they thought maybe that I didn't really know anything about the game or the process or how things work. But in actuality, I've been on the board longer than all the governors that are on there now. So,
Good
so
for
they can't really
you.
argue too much for that. So
That's awesome. Now, I was told you have a little bit of an interesting story as to, what made you so connected to the Melville Millionaires. So do you mind telling us, your family history with the Millionaires?
Well, my dad started out with Millionaires in 1974, was just on the board initially, and then probably, I think within about 4 years, he was president for 6 years, and then he was stepped down as president, and then he was treasurer for about 6 or 7 years, and then ended up back as president again for another 6 years. And then my mom was also involved for a number of years. And it's just been probably in the last 5 years that my dad has stepped down. And so he's been involved for a long time. And myself, I've been involved since 1984.
Wow,
So it's been a while.
yeah, no kidding. And so obviously I assume, what made you want to join was probably your dad and your mom's passion for the Millionaires. Then, hey, that was
For
passed
sure.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I was 10 years old. We billeted players forever, and so when I got married in 1986, and I think we were married a week and a half, and we already had our first billet. They were phoning to ask if we could keep players. So we just recently sold our house, and we live out at the lake now, so we're not billeting anymore. But
Okay.
it's amazing how much I miss it just
Yeah,
for a few years.
that'd be a big change, hey, because
Mhm.
you open up your home to these boys and they just become such a huge part of your family. Like it,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, we've been billeting since 1986, so we still keep in touch with a large majority of them. So
that's
can't complain. It's been a wonderful experience, and my kids grew up with it, and I mean, they still talk about all the stories. So yeah,
that's
it's been
great.
great.
So what do your children who I assume are like adult age, what do they think about you and being a woman and sitting on these boards and having been president of the Millionaires and a governor now? Like what do they think? They must be pretty proud.
Oh, actually, yeah, they are pretty proud. My son played for 3 years. He played with the Millionaires, and my daughter figure skated. So I mean, our life was at the lake. My husband was trainer for 21 years and retired just a few years ago. And then they called him back this year out of retirement to cover up until Christmas because the gentleman they had lined up for trainer, it didn't work out. So they asked my husband to come up, but we go to Arizona for 3 months after Christmas, so he could only commit till Christmas time. But so yeah, hockey is in our blood no matter what.
Isn't that, that's just awesome. And that's kind of what I'm finding is the theme with a lot of these women. And, you kind of touched on that sometimes they see a woman and they go, oh, well, what's she gonna know? Or things like that. But you know a lot in the end. Like it, yeah, like
You learn a lot through the years for sure.
exactly. Like, yeah, you may have not played in that league, but you end up knowing the ins and outs and the politics. And I've mentioned to a few other people doing these segments that sometimes fans forget that it is a business and you do
Absolutely.
need these different perspectives from, each club and then the league itself. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I
And
think you would bring such great perspective to the league, having been a president and part of an organization and stuff. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of times people just think that the women involved can be more emotional, but at the end of the day, I think sometimes as a woman, we have the know-how to maybe accumulate both, so like the, you know, the business end of it, and taking a look, taking it into perspective, but taking it as an emotional aspect too. So
Totally. And you know what? Sometimes that emotional aspect isn't bad though. Like
no, for sure.
especially when clubs are looking for something different, or you know, even as in terms of you're looking for different sponsors or things like that. If you can really make kind of that different connection with a different idea and make it translate to any way, whether it's emotionally or a business side, or, you know, it brings a pretty interesting dynamic when you have all these different opinions from women and stuff. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's so awesome. So do you have any advice for someone who is, you know, maybe looking to follow in your steps? And I know you do have someone who has followed in your steps and says
Yeah.
you are right there for her. So what's your advice to someone like that?
Well, I think you have to learn some diplomacy, and that's not always easy. But I think if you're not diplomatic, that can take away from what your whole objective is. And you know, fans are pretty passionate, just as much as board members. And you know, if you can keep that part in perspective, and keep a level head, and look at the whole picture of things, but never lose your focus of the team being what's important in the organization as to what's important, and to keep your personal feelings, or you know, certain situations you don't always agree with everything that's done, but I mean it's a diplomatic process where, you know, everything is voted on, and sometimes you don't always agree, but that's your job, is to back the decisions that are made, and just go ahead and try and keep your perspective on that. And the best interest of the organization is what matters.